Well, hello there, and welcome to another tank review. I'm Corny Swiss, and today we'll be looking at the M4A1, an American Rank 2 3.3 battle rating medium tank. And as with all reviews, all the various parts of the review are timestamped down below, so if you want to go see the simulator gameplay, the realistic gameplay, or maybe you're rushed and you just have enough time for a final opinion, all those parts of the review are timestamped down below, so feel free to go on your merry way and watch what you want to watch. So if you want to hear the garage portion of the review, though, let's get started. The M4A1 is one of the many Sherman variants that Allied forces used during World War II. The Sherman tank, the M4 as a whole, was produced between 1941 and 1945, and around 50,000 were made. The M4A1 represents right around 6,000 of those. There are about 6,000 of these tanks made throughout the course of World War II. And when the Sherman as a fighting vehicle was introduced, the M4 in general, it was vastly superior to what the German army was using at the time. Panzer IIIs, Panzer IVs with the shorter barrel 75mm guns. The Sherman's front armor was deemed just vastly superior to what those guns, the danger those guns represented. So when the Sherman was deployed in North Africa, it was resoundingly successful, and Allied commanders decided that this was kind of the only tank they needed to win the war. This would be adequate to get the job done. And it's important to remember with the Shermans that the design philosophy and the tank philosophy of specifically American designers, but sort of, I guess to a greater degree, Allied strategy was that tanks were the strike force. They were, you break a hole in the enemy line, then you send all the tanks through to just attack the rear of the enemy's defenses and just cause havoc and just push, and then just push until they run out of gas. So that the Sherman's guns are generally multi-purpose. The M4A1 is a prime example because you have this shorter barreled 75mm gun, which has a decently effective HE shell that could be used on infantry, for example, while maintaining a good enough armor-piercing shell to deal with, I don't know, buildings, enemy tanks like Panzer IIIs and Panzer IVs, which is what it would face at the time it was initially introduced. And then you also have some machine gun protection against infantry and also to support Allied infantry as they move up with the tanks. So the Sherman isn't really a tank-on-tank fighter. It's sort of a jack-of-all-trades and kind of a master of none. But we'll talk about that more when we get to the specifics of the tank. Like I said, Rank 2 machine, 3.3 battle rating. So it's sort of in that honey hole for me. The 3.3, 3.7 battle rating is probably my favorite tier to play at because I feel like everything's fairly balanced. Both sides, well, in this case, all three sides, Russians, Germans, and Americans, all have very effective guns and can get the job done against whatever they face. So it's in that butter zone, and it fits the bill. This tank does not struggle in that zone. 30.6 tons, you know, it's a little heavy, but it has a 400 horsepower engine, 2,400 RPM. Power to weight ratio is decent. However, the Shermans as a whole don't have a great top speed, 38 kilometers per hour. They'll get outrun by a lot of Russian tanks and German tanks. So they have the lowest top speed. However, it's respectable. The acceleration isn't great, but once you get this thing moving, it's tremendous at maintaining that momentum, and also it's tremendous at firing on the move. Because one of the additions to the Sherman is that it has some stabilization, vertical stabilization, which makes firing the gun on the move more accurate than it is for most tanks. So American tanks as a whole are generally going to be more accurate on the move, which is kind of good in War Thunder, considering how inaccurate it can be when you're going over terrain. It can go up a 41-degree slope, 24 degrees per second turret rotation. That's pretty good. This turret moves really fast, and the machine gun on top moves even faster. So, and you can use that 50 caliber machine gun. There is a bug at the moment that I'm recording this, obviously, you know, on Christmas Day, where you need 1 round of the default AP ammunition for the machine gun to operate. You can have the rest be whatever round you want, but you need 1 round of the default ammunition, and it doesn't even matter what you do with that round. I generally just load up my M61 shot and have that one, I think it's M79 shot, sitting in the untouched. I'll never use it, but that allows me to use the machine gun. I'm sure it'll be fixed at some point, but it's not really a big deal. Vertical guidance, 12 degrees of gun depression. That's really, really good. 25 degrees of elevation. That's pretty good as well. That's basically the extremes of both for a medium tank. So the gun depression is really, really nice. I think gun depression is more important than elevation, but this tank really has both, which is nice. So let's talk about the armor. So against short-barreled Panzer IVs and the 50mm Panzer IIIs, this armor is fairly respectable. 50.8 millimeters in kind of the center of mass, but it's back sloped at about 50. Let's see, 50. Oh, that's at 73. Right here though, 48 all the way up to 64. All right, so the effective thickness goes from around 65 all the way up to about 100, and then that thickness keeps going up. Goes down a little right here because we have 38.1 millimeters of armor up here, but it is sloped back tremendously, making the armor well over 100 millimeters. However, you do have some flatter bits right here where the viewports are, and you can be penetrated there, and it can be kind of bad. But those are small targets, and even then, they're still 60-something millimeters thick, and you just look at how small that window is. It's very small, very unlikely. You have a lower plate, which is also 50.8 millimeters, and is sloped a little less. You can kind of see that from the way the tank is shaped, that it slopes more as you go up, and kind of comes down here in another little rounded off bit. So this lower part is 50.8 millimeters as well, and it's about 70 some odd millimeters of armor. Right here it really flattens out, but as you come back down, obviously it starts angling out again. However, right here in the middle can be a little bit of an issue, and we'll talk about that more with the layout. And obviously the front of the turret, that's where the thickest armor is. 76.2 millimeters of armor. That's on the side and on this gun mantlet. This gun mantlet here is 50 millimeters of armor, and there is a hole behind it where there is no armor, basically right above the gun right here. And that can be an issue sometimes. However, that also is a small target. Sides of the tank, 38.1, 38.1, 50.8. If you get hit in the side, you're kind of toast. This is a high-profile machine. It stands really tall. So getting hit in the side is not out of the ordinary, and it can be kind of bad. Obviously, the rear is the rear. It's not very good. About the same thickness all the way around, sides and rear. But that kind of fits the whole design philosophy in the sense that this tank is supposed to be advancing, moving forward, pushing the line farther back, and attacking rear defenses. So the armor should be in the front, right? We want the thickest armor in the front. We want to maintain a little bit of speed, make it a little bit more, I guess, fuel efficient, get a little more speed out of this engine, and just keep pushing the bill forward. Because you don't, when you're attacking, you don't expect to take shells in the side, I don't think. So that's sort of the armor's picture. The turret is a pretty effective armor here. Now, there is kind of a weak spot here in the sense that it's 50.8 and it's not quite sloped all the way out. As obviously as you go farther along the slope, it gets thicker and thicker, but right in here there's this little 70 some odd millimeter section which you can be penetrated in, but more often than not it'll hit this mantlet here and just bounce, because this is 117 millimeters thick right there. That's pretty good. So let's look at the layout a little bit. The reason I pointed out the front part right here is because that's where the transmission is. The Sherman has a front-mounted transmission, which means you can get fires right there. So the armor's not all that thick right here, and the transmission's right behind it. So that can cause a serious issue for you if you maybe are up a slope and you unangle this, or even just facing straight on. You can be set on fire from the front, which could be an issue. From the front of the turret, it's a little bit backwards. The loader sits in the right-hand side if you're looking directly at the turret, which is different than most tanks. Usually the gunner sits on this side, but that means the best place to shoot this tank in the turret is to the left of the gun. You have the gunner, the commander. You might nick the machine gunner if the shrapnel goes down, but there's tons of ammo in here. Ammo, 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 ammo. Just ammo all over the place. So if you have to shoot the turret of the Sherman, either shoot him in his gun or right to the left of the gun where the gunner sits. That'll disable him, which is always nice when you're facing any tank. You want to have either your first shot disable them or knock them out. So from the sides, I pointed out all the ammo. It's basically an ammo rack below the turret. If you fire a shell into the side of this tank, you're gonna hit ammo somewhere. And the armor's not very thick, so usually if you get hit in the side, it penetrates. Same reason why I don't like angling very much in this tank. You can get away with a little bit because the armor is still well out of range here. You could probably get a little bit more. Something like this is about all you want to do, because you can see right here it starts really coming back in. And you don't want to get penetrated right here because the ammo is still in the line of fire right here and right here. Right? So angling with this tank isn't the best idea. However, you can coax a few degrees out of it, right? Just to give your front just a little bit more thickness. So, but the important thing to remember is the sides are made of ammo, and the back of the tank, like most tanks, is the engine, the fuel tanks, the radiator. This is just one giant firebomb back here, and the ammo rack is below the turret. So if you get the side of one of these things, shoot it below the turret or in the back part of the hull. That'll either set it on fire or just blow it sky high. Your driver sits to the right of the gun right here, and your machine gunner sits here. Now, this machine gunner I don't think matters very much, because I'm pretty sure the commander deals with the 50 cal on top, which I'm going to talk about in a second, because that's pretty useful. Driver, though, sits right here. He's not that protected, because you got to remember the armor right here is about 60 something. You know, it's right in here. That's where he's sitting. So shooting right here if you want to immobilize him, but more often than not, I try and go for the turret or maybe the upper part of the hull right around in here, because that'll usually penetrate and get the shell inside, will probably hit the gunner and then explode and hit some ammo right around it. So my favorite place to shoot the front of a Sherman is in the upper part of the hull right here, just because it's not so thick you can't deal with it. It's 80 something millimeters. At close range, Russian tanks can deal with that. With APCR, German tanks can deal with that. But you can get away. I think you can get the same effect if you shoot a little lower, like right about where this seam is. That's a good spot as well. Sherman on Sherman combat, because you do face a lot of Shermans when you play American tanks. Shooting them right here is a good idea because your shell is big enough, and if you have the M61 shot, it's usually effective enough to get through this. So that's a look at the armor. It's adequate. All right, short-barreled Panzer IVs are going to struggle. Panzer IIILs, sometimes they lack the punch to really deal with this tank effectively. However, they can penetrate you frontally at a fair number of ranges simply because they have this APCR shell. However, if you can get shots on target, their armor won't protect them at most ranges from your gun. So let's talk about the gun. Let's whip up the ammunition choices first. The gun comes standard with an M72 shot. 88 millimeters of penetration at 10 meters, 76 at 500, 50 at 1500, and 42 at 2000. What this means is that you can still penetrate a Panzer III's front plate out to about 1300 meters or so. That's where you can still reliably penetrate them. T-34s are a little bit of an issue. It's debatable. Usually it's about 1,000 meters for them, because even though their armor's only 45 millimeters or so, it's sloped back so hard it's effectively like 60 something. So with this shell, T-34s might be an issue. Muzzle velocity 619 meters per second. That's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. You get this HE shell for free. I've never fired it. I don't think 75 millimeter HE shells are that effective. So I would recommend against this. If you, whatever this shell can do, this shell can do as well. So there you go. M61 shot, that's the ammunition you want to be using in this tank. Has 1 meter per second less muzzle velocity, 618 to 619. But the armor penetration is 93 at 10 meters, 85 at 500, 61 at 1500, and 47 at 2000. With this shell, it's actually, and why was that selected? I don't know. With this shell, you can penetrate the front of a Panzer III if you hit them flush out to about 1500 meters or more, because you have more than the 50 millimeters of armor that they at worst have. If you hit them in one of their hatches at 1500 meters, which I granted is a difficult shot, you'll penetrate and do a ton of damage to the tank. And also, even if you hit them just in that front plate area, even with the spaced armor, 1500 meters, you should still be able to penetrate the tank and cause some issues. Right, but the issue is getting the shell on target sometimes. And the muzzle velocity doesn't really help with that. However, if you get used to it, it's actually pretty easy to handle this gun. It's not the most accurate at range. The variation between the shells is kind of big at super long range, but the rate of fire is good enough that you can just keep sending them, and that's kind of key. The 50 cal on top, no idea what the armor penetration values are. However, with the 50 cal, you can kill the side, from the side you can kill Panzer IIIs, Panzer IVs, Panzer IIs. Those no problem with the 50 cal. I've done it many times where I just spam their side, kill their crew, and just work them over, light them on fire, all kinds of good stuff. Obviously, this 50 cal isn't very effective against higher tier machines, but this tank doesn't see higher tier machines, so it's fine. At close range, 50 cal is going to be very useful because you can keep back like swarming tanks and just keep them at bay, disable them, light them on fire, do whatever you got to do. And I already mentioned it, 6.5 second reload time. And on a fairly poor crew, my crew is a little weak at the moment. I don't have anything in weapon reloading, so let's add that. It's down to 6.4. Don't have great crews yet, working on that. But that rate of fire is still really, really good. You carry 90 rounds of ammunition for the 75 and 1,000 rounds of ammunition for the 50 cal. The 50 cal, if you use it, early I like to use it sparingly, just because in like realistic and sim you can't reload it, and you never know when you might need it. So if I don't feel like it's completely necessary, I won't fire it until the very end of the game. But early in the game, if I feel like I need to fire the 50 cal to give myself a fighting chance, I'll spam it away and use all the ammunition, because it's I think of it as kind of the emergency button. I'm gonna spam the side of this tank, or even the gun barrel, just to try and disable him so I can get the next shot. And that's kind of my strategy with this tank. My first shot, I like to try and disable. The gun is really, really effective, but it has a tendency not to one-shot tanks unless you really hit them good, like in the ammo rack. So I generally go for gunners and drivers. That's my usual strategy, but keep in mind this tank can hang and bang with the best of them. It's a potent gun with a good rate of fire at its tier. Right, and the 50 cal is tremendously useful. I wish the just straight up M4 had a 50 cal on top. That'd make it very, very strong. And it's already a pretty good tank. So yeah, overview, the armor is adequate. It can save you. I wouldn't rely on it heavily though, because there are guns that can deal with you that this thing will see. Mainly Panzer IIIs and Panzer IIIs can deal with this with APCR, and long-barreled 75mm guns, which you will see when you drive this tank, can deal with the front of your tank fairly well, like Stug 3Fs, Panzer IV F2s, things like that. However, this thing packs a mean punch with this gun, and the 50 cal is really, really useful on top. Armor's adequate from the front, paper from the sides and rear, and below the turret is an ammo rack, back of the tank is a fuel tank. There you go. This tank you can play it aggressive, you can play it defensively. It's really a jack of all trades. It works really well in a group, because you can kind of just swarm and just overwhelm them with firepower, and the gun depression makes it really reactive, and the turret rotation speed means that this thing is a great knife fighter because you can be in there whipping that turret around and keeping up with tanks that are trying to circle you. So it's not an easy tank to deal with at close quarters, because it can and will get another shot, and it can and will shoot you if you're trying to hug its side or something, or maybe behind it. It can and will shoot you. So without further ado, let's move on to the replays. So here we are in a realistic battle on the Poland map in domination game mode. Now, before we get started, really, you'll notice my ammo loadout. I have a whole bunch of the M61 shot and a single M72 shot. And like I said in the garage portion, that's specifically to allow use of the 50 cal machine gun. It's a weird bug, I know, but it is a bug. So just do something like that, put one round in, and I'm not going to touch it this entire game. And even if, I think, according to what I read, you could just fire that shell right off in the beginning of the map, beginning of the game, not even at anybody, just fire it into the ground or just randomly in the air, and the machine gun would still operate. But to be safe, I just always leave it, don't ever touch it, and spam away on my M61 shot. What we're doing is, myself, a teammate or two, it's either one teammate or two teammates, are making our way over to B, with the goal being to capture it and then support A. Now, the enemy's actually going to make a decent push on B, and I think you're going to get a demonstration of the Sherman's armor and also the effectiveness of its gun. And also you can see when I turn the turret, the machine gun actually tracks faster than the turret, which is really nice because it means as long as you have ammo for that thing, in close knife fighting situations, you can always get some gun on the target. Because a turret turning at 24 degrees a second is a tough task to circle. But a 50 cal turning even faster, having the side of your tank can be even more of an issue. And the Sherman's pretty good at firing on the move. I would say majority of the time you might as well. There's no reason not to, because the rate of fire is good enough where that next shell will be loaded by the time you need to deal with anybody. And that steward over there is being a little bit annoying. He's actually, like, I guess just out of view range or whatever's happening. He's popping in and out of mark. But I can still see him, and I'm going to shell him a little bit, but then decide, okay, the enemy is here. I want to move forward into the cap circle a little bit, start capping this, to at least maybe slow them down. We have a T-34 here. Oh, that's a Locust, I'm sorry. Locust is an interesting little tank. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I have unlocked it, I haven't played it yet, but I certainly will be. And there's all kinds of tanks here. We got quite a few. And get wrecked. See as he rolls by. This is what I'm talking about with a Sherman. That's actually a Sherman 105, I do believe. Yep. And this is before the Sherman 105 got its little battle rating boost to 4.7. So this thing was in games with M4A1s a lot. And honestly, that wasn't a big deal, because I'd never found those 105s, unless they were firing heat, to be that much of an issue. But I don't know. Now here's an M4, similar. It's the same tank as mine, and we're just spamming rounds into each other. He's firing machine gun at me, I'm firing machine gun at him, and right here I lost my my gunner, but I got him back. Put one shell right where I was talking about before, next to the machine gun port. That gets his gunner and one of his drives. So now his turret's looking funny, and I just plant one through the side of his turret, because it was unangled, which meant it was a fairly easy shot. And this gun with the M61 shot has enough penetration to do the front of the turret if it's kind of unangled like that. And it's interesting because he's actually still moving, and I was for a moment concerned that he was still alive, but no, he's not. And at this point, we've capped all 3 zones, and the enemy's starting to make a more determined push back to try and retake this zone. Casual 105 Sherman over there, and I think my buddy has spotted it as well. I get the good news from him though, but still kicking. I've lost a fair amount of my tank, but we're still in it. There goes my horizontal drive. I managed to back up just a little bit there, and I'm actually able to shoot this guy even though my horizontal drive's out. And I'm going to be repairing here because, I mean, I can't go anywhere, and for some reason he decided to show me his side. I'm not quite sure. But now I'm going to unangle, well, show less of my side to the approaching enemy and start the repair. About 30 some odd seconds for that. But you can kind of see what I mean. This tank is fairly durable. It's not often you get one shot when you're driving a Sherman. A lot of times what does you in is you get hit and it disables you, and then the next shot gets you. It's more often than not, I find that I'm not getting one shot, but that might just be my experience. This F2 though is receiving the good news quite willingly. F2s are pretty scary for this tank, but you do have the advantage of your gun can certainly deal with them, and you have better armor than they do, so at least you have a fighting chance. But at this point we've capped all 3 zones. The enemy are sort of struggling to mount the counterattack because we have guys pushing through from A towards the middle. If they're kind of splitting their spawns, which means now I can move forward ever so slowly because my tank is fairly battered. I think my engine and my radiator, transmission, stuff is broken, that's for sure. But we're still kicking. We are still kicking. And coming up, I'm accidentally going to stop the recording. Didn't mean to, but I'll show you the post-battle results and all that good stuff. And there you can see kind of what's broken in the tank. And I like that feature because it kind of lets me gauge how many crew members I have left and things like that, which can actually be fairly important, and also their position. But myself and this other Sherman, we're just going to push along this road, come to the enemy spawn. The only parts you're going to miss is that a couple enemies spawned in like flak trucks and we dealt with them. Not a big deal. So let's skip to the end of battle screen, shall we? And there we are, as promised. I really do like the M4A1. So let's move on to the simulator battle. So here we are in a simulator battle with the M4A1. This is prior to me figuring out the 50 cal bug. So my 50 cal actually isn't working throughout this entire game. And thinking back, there were definitely times I could have used it. But anyway. A large portion of the enemy force has been spotted at the crossroads in the very southern middle part of the map. So that's going to become a major fighting point, and we're going to get over there as quick as possible and try and affect the outcome. Because from what it looks like, that's really going to be the contested part of this map. Coming over this hill, I like to come over hills already in sniper scope. It just lets me if I can see the enemy, I can just immediately start firing and engaging the target. If not, well, no harm, no foul, right? But we have some allied tanks a little farther up, so I'm going to keep pushing to get up to where they are. And I do believe I'm going to try and go to that grassy knoll up there. Well, that's not really grassy knoll, I guess it has some trees on it. That's where I'd like to be. Because on Mozdok, I don't quite fancy being at longer ranges against the German guns. The long-barrel 75 and the 50mm are more effective at range than my tank's gun. However, my gun does pack a punch. It's more difficult for me to get shots on target than it is for them. And there's kind of you see what I mean. I'm not quite used to the gun yet on this tank and this replay. I've since gotten a pretty good feel of it. But they called Artie on my position, which is a little unfortunate. I actually take a hit from, I believe, an F2 that nailed my gunner. which is unfortunate, obviously. But we're going to start reloading. I'm looking for that bugger. There he is. Lost the loader there. My first shot goes right through his driver's head, and he's promptly taken out by someone else, which is nice. His driver got quite a good helping of the good news. There's an enemy tank there. I can't quite tell what that is. It looks like a 3L. Oh no, it's a 3J1. I haven't messed around very much with the German tanks in since 1.45 went live. I've been playing a lot of American tanks, obviously. But I'm going to keep moving forward. Got to keep moving forward because closing distance in a Sherman is a good idea. My armor is more effective than theirs, even though they have probably better guns. My gun is perfectly adequate at those ranges, and my armor gives me a fighting chance. Their armor may not. So it's a good idea to close the distance, use this thing as a wolf pack medium, and advance with your teammates as quick as possible. We're going to come up over this hill, though, and find some enemies. Hello? Housekeeping? There's one. He got a fairly good helping of the good news. Just right through the side of the tank, took out the crew. Now, what's kind of unfortunate is that my loader bit the dust, and I'm reloading the gun something like half as fast. Which is a problem for the Sherman because the Sherman's gun really doesn't rely on the fact that it's very quick firing, but it certainly makes life easy when you can just keep sending shells at the target. And every shell is doing damage and really causing issues. And on the minimap you can see how this fight's developing. A majority of our team have pushed forward on the flanks, and we have this this horseshoe shape that eventually is going to collapse in and form. The road is going to become a serious contesting point where both teams are going to have to go over the top and really engage at close ranges, where I really prefer our chances because the German tanks, like I said, just don't have the armor to deal with that. This flank, however, is for the most part secure. The enemy will be spawning in the very southernmost spawn. However, they're not there yet, so can't really worry about them. Our goal here is to just keep the push going and slam into their flank and really cause them some issues. Now I'm going to get hit in the side, however it didn't penetrate. I'm pretty sure the tracks must have eaten it or something happened, because usually if you get hit in the side it's bad news for this tank. But continuing the sweep. Right now the goal needs to be to sweep out these guys, make it safe for our guys to come over that little ridge, over the road, get on this side, and we can make a concerted push into their cap and win the game. And this guy is, I think he was dealing with whoever he was dealing with, and then turning to deal with me. I'm gonna get a nice shot in there, set him on fire. Oh, he's bringing his gun down. I don't like sitting in front of 3Ls, but someone else knocks him out. That's always pleasant. I don't mind getting an assist when their gun's pointed at me. You know what I'm saying? I just want them to die. If my first shell didn't kill them and their next shell might kill me, I'd rather a teammate shoot them before they get to shoot me, that's for sure. But at this point, we've completed our maneuver. The enemy are now sort of crammed into their spawns, so we need to make a concerted effort as a team to push to the middle, to take the cap, and then defend it long enough to cap, which we stand a decent chance of doing. My engine took a pretty good hit there, undoubtedly through that middle part of the lower plate that I was talking about. So I'm gonna back up, try and expose as little of my tank as possible, and look for these enemies till I can deliver some good news. Because it seemed, oh, there we go. He hit the very side of my turret. I wasn't looking at him, so that side was a little unangled, and he took out my horizontal drive, which a little bit of an issue for me. So I'm going to back up, repair the tank. It's going to be about 30 seconds. kind of sit here and smell the roses. A vast majority of the enemy team is dead. The way we took the flanks and then collapsed inward was, I think, pretty effective against tanks that want to sit back, because it doesn't really force them to move, but at the same time it diverts their attention to the front, engaging our tanks at range. Meanwhile, we're rushing down the flanks and giving them all kinds of problems. Got my tank all repaired, and now it's time to push forward and win the game. Gonna see if we can't squeak in a few more hits here, but my tank is fairly heavily damaged, to say the least. The engine's on its last leg, that's for sure. This thing doesn't have a great top speed already, but it certainly doesn't help when your engine is severely damaged. But the hostile teams lost all their vehicles. That sounds great. And the tickets are just gonna run right out. Come on. There you go. Woohoo! Victory! Victory celebrations. I thought that was a pretty fun game, and the thing with the Sherman is that when you get a bunch of Shermans together, you just go forward. That's it. I mean, just go forward. Your armor is effective, and your gun would prefer to be at short range, so just get in there after him. But let's move on to the final opinion, shall we? Alright, so opinion time. What do I think of the M4A1? At a 3.3 battle rating, I would say this is an extremely strong tank. This tank could easily be at a 3.7 battle rating and not really feel any different. I really like the combination of the gun, the machine gun, and adequate, borderline good frontal armor. The frontal armor is kind of what makes this thing tick for me. The gun is good, and having the 50 cal is really nice. But the addition of sloped, reasonably thick armor just kind of makes this tank tick, right? I talked about it in the garage portion, how this 50.8 millimeters of armor with sloping starts from around 70 and goes all the way up to well over 100. Whereas this lower plate starts at 50 something, goes to 70, and then levels out to 50, and then obviously from then on is very thick, thanks to angling. So basically you have a weak point in the front right here. Alright, but that's fairly easy to deal with, because this thing has 12 degrees of gun depression. So you can sit on one side of the slope and be fairly safe against tanks shooting up at you, because they certainly won't be able to see this lower plate. All they'll be able to see is the heavily angled upper plate, which is over 100 millimeters thick, and there's not many tanks at this tier who can deal with that. Sure, you have a weak spot here, but that's a pretty small target right there, and then the gun mantlet is super thick like this, and it's just overall the front of the Sherman is durable. The M4 Sherman tank at 3.7 battle rating is probably one of my is in hot competition with the T-34E in my opinion. And the M4A1 is making an attempt to uproot the T-34E as my favorite tank. Not just because I'm American and America, but just because it's a good package that does really well at what it wants to do, which is be sort of aggressive, use the gun depression, get in there and use that turret rotation speed, and really just cause havoc with lightly armored early tier German machines like Panzer IIIs and Panzer IVs. Now, longer barreled 75mm guns give this thing trouble, like Stug 3Fs and Panzer IV F2s. But their armor is nowhere near as good as this tank's armor, and it's not inconceivable that you can bounce their shots and kill them. Had done it plenty of times, and if you catch the side of them, just light them up with the machine gun and maybe a shell from your cannon, and they're toast. They really are. So my opinion is that the M4A1 is a great place to start with American tanks. I haven't really come across an American tank I didn't like, except I'm not a huge fan of the 105, I'm going to say it. Especially not that now it's at a 4.7 battle rating. Haven't played it since then. I'm going to be playing it a lot once I unlock the M4A2 to help do a review on that. But this is probably my favorite Sherman at the moment. I like the M4. I guess these two are equal in my opinion. I just like that this one has a machine gun. I just like the machine gun. It's cool. So in my opinion, this tank is great. It's a great 3.3 battle rating. It could be 3.7, and I'd still think it'd be really, really great. So if you're grinding for this tank, have no fear. You're in for a good time. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the review. I hope it helped. Hope you maybe learned, maybe got a tip or two on how I think this tank should be played. And I hope it helps you grind out the rest of your American tanks. But anyway, I've been Corny Swiss. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, just drop them down in the comments section. I'll be more than happy to read and discuss anything you want to discuss. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.